Welcome to the Balance Blueprints podcast, where we discuss the optimal techniques for finances and health, and then break it down to create an individualized and balanced plan. I'm your host, Justin Gaines, here with my co-host, John Prover. So in this episode, we're going to do something a little different. I have Aiden here with me. He's a high school student. He's shadowing me for the day. And so we're going to get a little bit of the financial perspective as well as some other perspectives from a high school student on what they're thinking about when they go and look at colleges or look at their next career step. And obviously, John and I have been through that. We've had two very different paths as far as approaching that. We had two very different college experiences too, for degree selection. I went to one college, stayed there. John transferred into Siena, so we went to one college, right, and then transferred to Siena. So you had two colleges, or
and did abroad.
And you did abroad, and I did not do abroad. So two very different experiences. And then I know that we've talked about it at great lengths in our personal lives about how we wish we knew a bunch of stuff that we didn't know going into it, and probably would have made different decisions and just approach things differently. So this will be interesting to see how, flash forward 10 years from when we were making this decision, see if 10 years changes the thought process and the questions, and then hopefully be able to answer them and have a good podcast out of it as well. So I'm excited. I don't know what the questions are, so this will be interesting. We'll probably get some out of left field questions, but Aiden, kick it off. What's your first question for us?
I think jumping into it, one I've been thinking about, do you think navigating the college scene has changed in the last 20 to 40 years? And if so, if any significant change, what would you do about it?
So has college changed in the last, or navigating the decision changed in the last 20 to 40 years? I would say yes, only because, economies are different, job placement's different, all those things are different. So I do think, going to college, early 2000s, 90s, 1990s, going to college then, if you went to college, it really didn't matter what you got a degree in. You were guaranteed a higher income immediately. It automatically put you into a higher income earning bracket. It made it so you had the ability to make that higher income. Flash forward to today, and I would say that when we graduated college, John and I graduated in 2019. When we graduated college, I think there was a high probability that college would result in a higher income, but it wasn't necessarily guaranteed. And I think even now it's even more so a case of there are certain degrees that if you get them and you specialize in that area and you stay in that industry, you'll have a higher income. But if you get other degrees, it's not going to have any impact on your income or your job placement. I think there's a lot of money to be made right now in the trades. I think for those individuals that have an interest in that space and want to work with their hands and want to have that as their career, I think they'd be crazy to go to college. You can make way more than a college grad right out of college if you go and apprentice and become a plumber, an electrician, a carpenter. Those trades for the longest time were demonized. When John and I were in high school, it was the quote unquote dumb kids who did that. And now those quote unquote dumb kids are making great money and laughing all the way to the bank. So I think, it shouldn't have been stigmatized. It was stigmatized, and now it's causing a massive labor shortage. But John, I am curious what your take is on this as well.
Yeah. Agree with everything you say. I think what it really does nowadays is highlight the importance of you should really know what you want to do before you go. And that's because of that shift in terms of, I think, like you said, right when we graduated was probably the turn of bachelor's degrees not really holding the weight that they used to hold. And that makes it tough because the price of them have probably only gone up. I was going to say stay the same, but gone up.
No. And the price, the other thing too, is you got to look at price from a price to average income earning as well. And the price to average income has it's outpaced the growth. As average income has gone up, the cost of college has gone up at a much faster rate. Yes. So if they were the same, then you'd be in a similar situation. But the fact that your average income, just in general, in the general labor market, the average income compared to the average income previously, the pace at which those have grown have been very different, and college has just gotten more and more expensive in that ratio comparison, which is why you need to know that you're making the right decision, which is a tough thing to put on a high school kid.
Oh, it's extreme. So just to speak from personal experience and what I went through, I explored and tried to figure out throughout college, and I would recommend not doing that because it's a very expensive way to explore. And there's a lot of ways that you could actually broaden your mind a lot better. So at least I was lucky enough to travel a little through school, but I felt the effect of my college degree because I may have not gotten the best one for what I wanted to do because the school didn't offer maybe the right one, because I went to school without knowing that I wanted to do that. I have felt the effect of it to this day of I need more schooling to, I guess, make up for the lack of schooling I had in, certain fields. So I strongly recommend, I'll just close, that question with that, of really know what you want to do. And if that means a gap year, if that means working a job until because you're just socking away money and college will be even easier to pay for, that's what I strongly recommend. And if you even have any adults these days, because I know some that do, that still say, oh, to get ahead, you need to get a master's degree or a college degree, or school is the most important thing. They're very dated for all of the reasons Justin said. They're still thinking about it in their time period, which they're right. They're right for their time period, but it's changed.
What else do you have for us?
Number 2.
Or follow-up questions to that, if you have follow-up questions, because that could also be the case.
Not for this one, but you did kind of segue into my next question when you were talking. How would you suggest balancing financial independence versus spending more of your focus on the actual college and good grades?
Good question. So
that's a good one.
How do you balance financial independence and focusing on the education and getting good grades? Explain what I did, and then let's take it from there. I always tell people, one, when you're looking at colleges, and this analogy in the current market doesn't necessarily apply, but I always used to say, looking at colleges is like shopping for a car. Nobody pays the sticker price. The reason I say that fall apart, because most people are paying above the sticker price right now in our briefly outside of COVID world. But I'm sure that's going to come back down where, the sticker price is negotiable to a sense. Most colleges offer scholarships in-house. You have scholarships you can get from other organizations, depending on what you're involved in. But I think in order to maintain your financial independence, you have to know what the college is going to cost you, what you're going to school for, and as a result, since you know what you're going to school for, you're going to know the average income for that profession when you graduate college. I'm a huge proponent that your cost of going to college each year should not exceed the annual pay after taxes of the profession you want to go into. So if you have a profession that the average pay after college is $60,000, you're going to be in the, what's that put you in, the 22% tax bracket, marginally adjusted. You're probably bringing home $48,000 to $49,000 a year, which means you should not be paying more than $48,000, $49,000 a year for that degree. Because if you go outside of that ratio of dollar for dollar postgraduate income, you're not going to be able to afford the loans and paying that stuff off. And so doing that allows you to kind of narrow down the scope of what degrees are worth going to college for and which ones aren't. But you brought up, getting good grades. And I also feel that the reason why you go to college is to purchase a network. And what I mean by that is very similar to when you join a country club. You pay membership dues in order to have access to those people. I think you're doing the same thing when you go to college. I think you should look at the alumni network of the college you're going to. I think you should look at the size of the college and take into account all these factors, because you don't know who else is going to apply and who else is going to go there, or who the current students are. You also don't know what they're going to turn out to be. But what you can look at is their network based from alumni. Where are their alumni getting jobs at? Where do they currently work? Most people, if they see the same college on the resume, it's going to help you open the door. It's going to help you get the interview. Not necessarily is it going to help you get the job, but it's going to help you open the door to get the interview, and then you have to sell yourself in the interview. But if you go to a college and you're not getting that access, then your grades might play a larger role. But I'm a huge proponent that grades don't measure intelligence; they measure obedience. And so if you're really good at following rules, you can get a 4.0. If you don't like following rules, you're probably not going to get a 4.0 because you're not going to do the things the way you need to do them in order to ace every single class. I did not graduate with a 4.0. I didn't even graduate with a 3.5. I didn't even graduate with a 3.0. But my income earning now, and even my first year out of college, was in the top 10, probably in the top 5% of my college graduate cohort. And that's because when I was at college, I was working. So I was building my resume, and I was focused on networking opportunities and getting in front of the right people so that I had strong ties into the alumni base, so that then I could leverage those relationships into job opportunities, into other things. The education and getting good grades is important, but I don't think it's the primary reason and the primary focus you should have, simply because the reality is when you get into the labor markets and get into the real world, you may have to pass tests in order to get licenses. But then when I have questions about insurance stuff, or I'm working on a case and I don't remember something, I turn to Google and I know the right question to ask. And that's the important part, is knowing the right question to ask, because we have a world of answers at our phone with Google. So if you know the right question to ask, you can find the right answer. Knowing the right answer isn't the issue. Knowing the right question to ask is the issue. And so if you have a firm understanding of the knowledge, which means you have, a C+ to a B- in the class, which is a 2.7, I think you have enough information to be able to ask the right questions. Asking the right question is going to open more doors than having all the right answers in your head, in my personal opinion. John, you may feel otherwise, but let's get your take.
That's what's tough, is I don't feel otherwise, but in the more science fields, you have to do otherwise. So I agree with you, but they're probably looking, you phrase it in a great way, they're looking for more obedience, because they put, in my opinion, too much weight on the grades, the regurgitation, the memorization. It's needed to a degree.
Well, and I think part of the reason in the medical field too, because that's the other thing, is like you're talking medical health sciences, I'm talking business stuff, very different components, because as in the business world, you can just go off on your own and start your own business and prove yourself that way, or work for somebody and work your way up the chain. The health world, though, you have to have some sort of way to weed out and rank people. And so in those fields, absolutely, if you're going to law school, you're going to get a medical degree, grades are going to be highly important because they have to rank you in some way.
But here's the thing is, you have to play their game to a certain degree. And I'm very bad at playing their game. So that's why I may have not done the best as others, because I think some of the best practitioners in the health world these days are the free thinkers. But I think almost all of them did play the game to get to where they had to be, and then did the free thinking. So I still wrestle with that. But I would say I agree with you. That's probably more important. Slightly depends on the degree. And then the only other thing I would recommend is on-campus jobs. I loved that. They work so well with your schedule. So I tutored. I did some things like that. So that was a great way to bring in money. And then just work during the summers like that. That really helped me. I mean, I paid my college off pretty quick, and that's mainly because the second we were out during the summer, I worked, and then I didn't. You worked off campus, I know, which is also very feasible. But I did
RA,
just like,
so that was on campus, covered my house.
Oh, that's true too.
And then most of my stuff was off campus for sure,
Yeah.
which makes it more difficult. You got to have a car or transportation to get there.
Yeah.
So it definitely is another thing to juggle. But you did bring up a good topic that we used to talk about all the time, which is we can tell people that college isn't worth the money because we went there.
Yeah.
Somebody our same age working in the same field can't say that if they didn't go there. And it's the whole, you can't discourage something that you don't know. And because we've been to college, we know. And so we have the ability to say that it wasn't worth it. And so it's just ironic, because somebody who didn't get a college degree, any one of our friends that didn't get college degrees could say the exact same thing that we're saying, and they would be discounted because they didn't play the game. But because we've played the game, we can now say, it's a game.
I don't know what's better, but
it's just the irony of it. It's just the irony of it. It's that club or that cult or that world that you have to be a part of in order to discredit it.
Yeah.
So, it's very true. Very true.
What else?
I think there are great points there. I will say I do tend to side a little bit more. I do side a little bit more on John's side, where the opening yourself up, alumni, and getting that network started is great. And I do think for a business one, that is almost 100. That would be almost 100% of the priority. And for a medical field, I definitely see how it would be skewed a lot towards the other side of playing the game. I think I would, with mine being engineering, electrical engineering, I think would be a healthy mix of both. You need a good network too.
You're going to need the grades for that.
Yeah.
Any engineering degree, you're going to need the grades.
But also coming out of college, you're going to need the network, especially with what I'm wanting to do.
Right. Yeah. For sure.
And thankfully, I have already started. I have a couple friends who have good connections with the CIA and Lockheed, which is what I'm interested in.
Perfect.
But I think the grades are equally, if not more important in that circumstance.
Right. For sure.
And the next question, which does go a little bit under the balancing aspect. Normally, you would have a work and social life balance in an adult life, but with college specifically, I think that adds a school part. Placing yourself in the shoes of a college student, how would you achieve this balance, and what would you do?
So you should view your class work as your job. And so when you go from college to working, the only thing that should shift out is if you're a full-time student, that should be your job. And so, yes, we're saying go and get other jobs outside of that. And so that just means, adding that into your job requirements. But your primary focus should be the schooling. And the schooling, when you graduate, will just be replaced with the job. So if you're spending 40 hours a week on school work, when you go and work and you have an outside job, so you're spending 50, 60 hours a week, most careers that you get into, you're going to be expected to do 50, 60 hours a week when you start out. And so you're just going to swap out your schoolwork and the jobs that you were working for your actual job. Okay. And if you can, early on in your schooling career, if you can set yourself up that way and not operate like most college kids where they just do it at a whim and do it whenever they want to, but you set, okay, I'm going to take, you might like morning classes, so you might take 9 a.m. classes, or you might like evening classes, but pick at minimum an 8-hour window that you're going to do work. And that 8-hour window is when you do your classes and you do your homework and you do your group projects, and all of your work is done in that 8-hour window. And then occasionally you'll have to meet with a group outside of those hours, or you might have to work more than those hours. And that's very similar to how it is in the work life. But I think the hardest transition in college is having the freedom to set your own schedule and thinking that means you don't have to have a schedule. And so that then also causes pains when you switch from school to college, or school and college to working, because you went from, I'll just do whatever, whenever, and nobody has control over my schedule, to then your job is what has control over your schedule, and that's what sets your parameters. If you picture it as your work throughout college and then just switch to the job, it'll be a much easier transition, and you'll probably get better grades just because you'll have set times where you're like, oh, I'm supposed to work from, say you don't like 9 a.m., say you don't want to wake up early. So you work from, instead of 9 to 5, you work from 11 to 7. And so now you're just getting that work done in that time frame. But you say you're done at 4, and you're like, oh, I have 3 more hours. Instead of pushing that project out that is coming up, do 3 hours of work on it, do 2 hours of work on it, and start building those habits that'll translate over into the work life phenomenally.
Yeah. If I'm understanding your perspective and question right, I almost wouldn't worry about your work or your school life balance as much as in college versus when you get out. I mean, so a couple points on this is you develop, again, the network, great relationships, but just with your peers, you're basically living with, if you're lucky enough to develop friendships, living with some of your best friends, which even if they're maybe in a different dorm, just across campus, is closer to your friends and that number of people you'll be for a long time. So when you get into the real world, I would say it's almost harder to have maybe a social life that's that easy to develop, because you just have friends, people always doing stuff. And I'm not saying parties, obviously there's parties probably every night, but you can find people with similar interests that you don't have to coordinate, like, hey, are you free this day? Hey, are you busy that day? Hey, how's your work schedule that way? Because you'll see each other walking to the gym, walking to the lunchroom, and you'll say, you want to go on a hike tomorrow? Yeah, this is my time. So I wouldn't be too worried about that balance. I think it's a lot easier to balance than you may think. It's almost harder, I would say, once you graduate. And then just to go off Justin's point as well, I would use college as an experiment of, because if we look at Justin's life now, it's like he doesn't have to work exactly 9 to 5, and he can do that well. So it's like, use college as an experiment of, can I get everything I need done, not maybe working the conventional schedule? Because if you're someone who thinks they want to work for themselves or own their own business, that might be a good time to test that out. And if you go through and you're like, wow, this year I got nothing done and I tried to do that, then you might be like someone who is like, okay, maybe even though I'd like to do that, maybe I do need a company or a 9 to 5 giving me that box, because otherwise I won't get that stuff done. So I would only add that because I think Justin's right in terms of majority. I don't even know what 90% of people coming out aren't going to be doing those 9 to 5s. But just looking at him, it's like, if he,
Right.
if you tested that out, yeah. So that might be a good experiment, because you can get away with, in terms of your grades might not be as good if you didn't do as well, but you're not getting like fired from a job. So it might be a good time to test it.
That's true too. Let's figure out what schedule works best for you.
Yeah.
On this topic of the experimentation and trying to find that balance, if you find yourself in an experiment that doesn't work and the balance is not falling apart, whether it be you're about to lose a job that you have part-time or your grades are tanking, what sacrifices would you make? Like, maybe you don't hang out with your friends as much, maybe you call out of work, or you skip a few classes?
In my experience, so I guess I'd back up. If it's a matter of you're going to lose your job in college, lose the job. Learn how to deal with that, because you're probably going to lose a job in the working life, in the working world. So don't look at it as a massive downfall. Look at it as your opportunity to actually feel and experience what losing a job feels like, and then how to recover from that. You're not there to work. You're there to learn. And so just take that as another learning experience. If it's a matter of your grades are tanking, in my experience, grades are tanking as a result of not doing the work. If you're not doing the work, you're not going to pass the classes. If you are doing all of the work legitimately and you're putting the time in and it's just not working, every college that I know of has some sort of tutoring program and pays students to be tutors that you don't have to pay for. So you can just go to the library, go to the tutoring center, go to any of that sort of stuff, and seek out the tutoring, and also build relationships with your professors. Every professor is going to have office hours. It's typically required by the college. If you have a question on a topic and you're just not able to fully understand it, go send an email to your professor, meet with them during their office hours, sit down with them for an extra 30 minutes, an hour, and just talk it through. Because they're trying to teach, 20, 30 people in a room the same topic. And if your brain just isn't connecting on it in that way, I'm sure they have a different way to experience it and a different way to explain it. Most colleges, especially in this environment, are switching towards professors that have had work experience, which means they've probably been in middle to upper level management, which means they've had to explain this to several different, brain types and several different personalities. And so they're just using whatever's either most natural or most best received in their experience in the classroom. But if that's not working for you, having a relationship with them, seeing a tutor, will allow you to spend that extra time, but also get a different perspective on it.
Yeah, I think this is a tricky question, because so taking it from a health stance, so I think Justin's completely right. If you're looking at jobs versus school, your schooling's more important. That's why you're there. I'm going to back up even a step further of before you hopefully even get to questioning if you have to quit your job. Like we're humans. Like we know how much time is wasted. Like, are we scrolling on social media a lot? Are we doing this? Because technically it should get done. I went to school. I only worked part-time, so I didn't work full-time. And by part-time, I probably mean like 15 hours, not even 20. So I didn't do a ton of work during school, but I went to school, did that job, worked out, still had relationships with friends. You got to look in the areas first of, am I spending time on my phone too much? And let's differentiate between I'm going out with friends until 2 a.m., which is ruining my next day, or am I getting rid of just hanging out with my friends during the day? So, you can get rid of one of those and not the other. And I think that's an important differentiation. And then, the other thing that you brought up too, which was a good point, is are you not getting the work done? Because I would then look at this of, are you interested in the subject? Are you just procrastinating and not doing well in your degree because you actually don't like it and you're just there because, I'm supposed to be a doctor, or, I'm supposed to be an engineer. But, we tend to procrastinate things we don't actually want to do. And if it's not that, like Justin said, completely agree. Just go get some tutoring. It's free. Work with it. Like if you actually like the subject and you're just not doing well, you'll do fine. You'll pass. Just get some extra help.
Yeah, that's a good perspective too. I didn't even think about the component of the amount of pressure that's on you to be in the right field, that you may just be telling yourself, I can get through it, versus that may be a sign of, no, you actually just don't like this and you're trying to muscle your way through it, and maybe a career change is the right thing for you.
Yeah, because I feel, especially myself, you're so scared to get into at the time, even now, but you're so scared to get into the wrong degree or the one you weren't supposed to, or one people don't want you to do. And I changed my major, I think, four times. And still,
Well, the average working professional will change careers 7 times in their career.
Yeah.
So, that a career change means, you were working in the marketing department. So you were a marketing manager, and they realized that, you'd be really good in HR. So then you moved to HR. That's a career change because you went from one profession to another. And that on average, seven career changes, which typically comes with 7 job changes as well. And so it is interesting that, like, when you look at the statistics, it's likely that you choosing the right profession isn't necessarily going to be the profession you're going to stay in. So being concerned, and I always tell people too, part of the reason why you should work in college is so you can find out the jobs that you don't want to do. Your internships aren't necessarily about finding the dream job for you. You do want to pick something that you think is ideal for you, but finding out that it's not ideal for you, in my opinion, is a better use of an internship and more beneficial, but also just more insightful. If you get into an internship and you find out that you absolutely hate it and you do not want to be there and you want to change either careers, or you just know that that portion of your career is not the way you want to narrow in and focus on, that to me is more valuable than going into a career and finding out that, I could do this. Because a lot of times you're not going to find what you love. You're going to find something that you like. You'll become complacent. You'll stay there. And then 6 years into your career, you hate it. And now you need to make a shift, which isn't a problem. But if you go and you do an internship, you find out that you absolutely hate that, you now know for the rest of your life that you should not target that business type. You should not target that stuff. And there's a lot of knowledge in bad experiences. And so shying away from bad experiences in college, I also think's a pitfall that is just normal for you to try to avoid bad things. But bad things teach us so much.
The only thing I want to add to that before moving on too is to go off of your how do I balance everything question. Is everything Justin just said, take the same exact approaches, but do it with your classes too. If jobs become too much and you can't try out jobs, take a class you didn't think you would take, or just see what you like about this class or not that class. Because different classes, they're going to teach you different stuff, different interests. You might go for engineering and be like, holy cow, I'm in love with French literature. You know what I mean? Like, I know that I'm saying an extreme example because it can happen. And then you just don't be afraid. Like Justin said, don't be scared to switch. Even if you've been in that major for a year, you have all your friends of like, because I know this was a big thing, like marketing majors got made fun of at Siena because it's not a real major, but you just gotta, if that's what you love and that's what you want to do, you know, don't be afraid to do that.
Well, yeah, and in this digital world, a lot of those marketing managers, I know a handful of them that graduate with us that make well into the six figures, work for themselves, and have complete work-life balance, travel the world, and make great money. So who's laughing now?
Yeah. So, thanks for listening to our podcast.
We hope this helps you on your balance freedom journey.
Please share your thoughts in the comments section below.
Until next time, stay balanced.